It's the Weege Show part 2 here as we wrap up the final round of Monster Energy Supercross, that nutty, wild, crazy 250 class. Been a couple of years now since the final race was both an East-West showdown and paid points for the championships on both sides, and the racing has been phenomenal just about every time, and this one is going to live up to that previous hype as well, as would Race Tech Gold Valves. A lot of hype, they live up to it. Your suspension will be plusher, better bottoming resistance, and more traction, and they're made and engineered in the USA. Go to racetech.com for more. Now, where do I even start with this wild 250 race? Let's start with Austin Forkner, because he had the incident that affected not just him and his title hopes, but also the title hopes of the other coast, which would have been the East. Coming into this one, Forkner and Shane McElrath had small points deficits they had to make up on Dylan Ferrandis and Chase Sexton. That put both McElrath and Forkner into must-win mode, and wouldn't you know it, they immediately get out front, 1-2, McElrath over Forkner. They have to win the race. Both of them have to win it. I have no idea how they stack up because they raced opposite coasts this year and last year. So we have not seen McElrath against Forkner in a Supercross in ages. Who knew what was going to happen, but we knew the motivation was there, especially with Dylan Ferrandis and Chase Sexton in the back. And maybe that's why Forkner went down. He crashed on a dragon back, and maybe he was going too far, maybe he was pushing too hard, I don't know, but he went down, and then that led to a red flag, which also changed McElrath's situation because he was out front. And just a little trivia here, the rulebook says if 3 laps of the race are complete, they go to a staggered restart, which means they start on the front straightaway, the starting straightaway, in the order that they were in when the red flag came out. But in this case, they completed just slightly less than 3 laps, which meant a full restart, and that bailed out Chase Sexton a bit. Now, Sexton had started, yes, last. He came into the first turn in absolute last place on the first start, while McElrath was out front. Now, Sexton had done a great job slicing and dicing his way toward the front. He wasn't buried. He was in a good enough position where he probably would have got on the podium and won the title anyway. We'll never know. The bottom line is, another restart. By the way, McElrath was leading a race with Sexton in the back a couple of races ago, and that had a red flag restart too. So that's tough luck for McElrath, but you cannot say that Sexton didn't go out and earn this championship, because on the restart, he started better. He was all over McElrath, and then had a little assist from his teammate Jet Lawrence, who ran into McElrath, and that allowed Sexton to get the lead. Sexton decided, I think he didn't want McElrath right behind him, so he actually let McElrath pass him. Then McElrath decides to play some games too. He practically stops on the start stretch. Sexton does not want to go by him. They are riding incredibly slow for riders still first and second in the race. Then Sexton, I think, says, all right, I'm going to try something different. I'll just try to take off. Goes around McElrath, and he does. He puts the hammer down and pulls away. Maybe McElrath would have liked to have done something about it, but there was nothing he could do about it. And credit to Sexton, by the way, after the restart in that previous race, it was the same thing. I mean, he was just faster. He pulled away from McElrath, or sorry, he stayed on McElrath, and then pressured McElrath. McElrath ended up going down. I feel like there are 2 straight-up wins for Sexton in the last 2 rounds, meaning he deserves the title. But those red flags give a little bit of a what could have, what should have, if you're in the McElrath camp. But Sexton's goal this year was to prove he could straight up get it done, whereas last year he was really the second place guy until Austin Forkner got hurt. I just don't think you can put a doubt on Sexton's championship now. He was faster than McElrath when it counted in these races after the restarts, so there's something to be said for that. As for Ferrandis, he didn't have to worry about Forkner anymore because Forkner was down and out after that big crash. His teammate Justin Cooper was mathematically still in it, but Cooper, after winning a heat race, went down hard on the first start and wasn't really a factor in the race after the restart, so Ferrandis really didn't have to worry. It's unfortunate, by the way, that Ferrandis has this gnarly French accent and we can never figure out exactly what he's saying, because if you can figure it out, it's often quite poetic what he's saying. He said his heart broke for Forkner, but also his own legs sort of broke because he didn't have them under him after the restart because he had no reason to push because Forkner was no longer there. And then he just kind of cruised. But cruising is not easy in the 250 class. It is nutty. You had Cameron McAdoo and Jet Lawrence running into each other a million times. McAdoo hit a bunch of other guys too. Then McAdoo got taken out, I think, in the last turn by Cooper. It was wild all over the place. Michael Moseman ends up getting third, partially because he rode well, partially because dudes were taking each other out and knocking each other down. 250 class was just awesome. I mean, just awesome. By the way, in the heat race, Sexton was tripling on an inside line. I don't like making judgment calls with these things. I'll defer to my buddy Jason Thomas, who raced for a long time, and he said Sexton can't triple in that situation. The situation was he was trying to pass Colt Nichols, who wasn't jumping. Nichols went to guard the inside. They clipped. I think an injury for Nichols, probably a broken arm. That's not good. It was certainly cardiac arrest time for Sexton to have a crash in a heat. Ferrandis went down in his heat because he got a bad start. He had to go to the LCQ. I don't even know, man. I don't even know. You had drama for every single one of the title contenders involved in this race. But I do feel that if you're going to say the two guys that won were Ferrandis and Sexton, I don't think you could really say that they weren't deserving champions for all the nuttiness and all the craziness all year. I think you can make an easy case to say that they overall were the best guys. Tough break that Forkner didn't get his chance to race for it. Tough break with the red flags for McElrath. Kind of a bummer in their camp for sure. There was a protest after the race, Star Racing protesting the fuel in Sexton's bike. The Geico team tells me that they just run the same VP race fuel at every race, so they don't think there's anything to that. So they think they're going to be okay. Championship is Sexton's. Championship is Ferrandis, who I just want to also mention something cool Ferrandis said. He said there was pressure on him. He knew last year when he came into this race behind Cianciarulo in points, he would have been willing to do anything to win the title, and he was afraid that Forkner was willing to do anything to win this title. That was just interesting insight into the racer's mind there. Stop texting me, everybody. I know this race is crazy. And also one other thing, I want to thank the folks at Feld for just putting these races together. It could not have been easy. I think they had a bit of a skeleton crew through a lot of this pandemic. As like a lot of companies, there were some employees let go. I don't think so much on the Supercross side, but it was reported in the news. I'm not breaking anything here. This was almost an impossible situation to try to get a race together, multiple races together, and they did it. They did it, and very few side effects. Sucked it out of fans there. There were a few minor things that maybe, and actually improved a lot of them, I gotta say, as this thing went on. They didn't have pit boards, kind of, at the first race, for example. Some people are not going to agree with the social distancing rules, but they are what they are. It allowed 7 races to happen. I don't think you can argue that Ferrandis and Sexton were the deserving champs of their division. Certainly can't argue that Eli Tomac was a deserving 450 champ, because most importantly, these felt like real championships, and that was the #1 goal. Keep the integrity in it. This wasn't weird enough to put any sort of asterisk on anything. These were real 17-round championships with the best riders lining up to battle each other. And that is job well done and mission accomplished for the folks at Feld, who had to be running sleepless nights to put this ridiculous, unprecedented, no one had ever thought of these things plans together to run these races. And I think everybody had fun in Utah too, which was an unexpected side effect of this. Who knew? Salt Lake City, Utah, Park City, Utah. The industry now is going to catch the fever. They love it. Great racing in a real season with real riders on the real racetracks. Didn't even know it was going to happen. So good job to the folks at Monster Energy Supercross for getting there. And congrats to the champs. See you in a couple weeks. Time for Lucas Oil Pro Motocross.